I could feel the sweat dripping down my back as I rushed from table to table, balancing plates of greasy diner food while keeping an eye on the clock. Every second counted. My shift was ending soon, and I had exactly 15 minutes to get to the hospital before visiting hours were over. My son, Liam, was waiting for me. He was always waiting. "Hey, waitress. I've been waiting for my bill for 10 minutes, a gruff voice barked from the corner booth. I clenched my teeth and forced a smile. "Sorry about that, sir. Let me get that for you." I was exhausted, but I couldn't afford to slip up. Not with the hospital bills piling up, not with Liam's life hanging in the balance. My son had a heart condition, one that required surgery I couldn't afford. Every extra dollar, every overtime shift, every humiliating moment of dealing with entitled customers, it all went toward keeping him alive. As I hurried to the counter, I spotted my manager, Tony, standing with his arms crossed, eyes locked on me. My stomach dropped. That look never meant anything good. "Sophia, my office." "Now," he said, his voice low but firm. My hands shook as I untied my apron and followed him. I couldn't afford to lose this job. Not now. Tony's office smelled like old coffee and cheap cologne. He shut the door behind me, leaning against his desk. "You've been late 3 times this month," he started, flipping through a folder that I knew had my employee records. "And I saw you sneaking out early last week." I swallowed hard. "Tony, I have a sick son." "I get it, Sophia, I do." His voice softened slightly, but his eyes stayed sharp. "But business is business. I can't have unreliable staff. I should fire you." Panic surged through me. "Please, Tony. I need this job. I'll do anything." A slow smirk spread across his face. "Anything?" The way he looked at me made my skin crawl. Before I could respond, the door burst open. A man stepped in, tall, lean, with an air of quiet intensity. His clothes were worn, his face shadowed with stubble, but his piercing eyes locked onto Tony with a force that made my sleazy manager stiffen. "She's done here," the man said, his voice low and firm. I blinked. "Who is he?" Tony scoffed. "Excuse me? Who the hell are you?" The man pulled out a few $100 bills from his pocket and slammed them on the desk. "That's for whatever you think she owes you. Now leave her alone." I was speechless. Tony, usually smug and untouchable, hesitated. He looked at the money, then at the man. Finally, he shrugged. "Fine. Get out, Sophia." Just like that, I was jobless. But I was also free from Tony's slimy grasp. The man turned to me. "Come on," he said. I hesitated, but something in his eyes told me I could trust him. "Who are you?" I finally asked. "My name's Daniel," he said simply, "and I think I can help you." I followed Daniel out of the diner, my mind racing. Who was this man, and why did he help me? As we walked down the dimly lit street, he finally spoke. "I know about your son." I stopped in my tracks. "What?" "I've seen you at the hospital," he said. "Liam, right? He needs surgery." I felt my throat tighten. "How do you know that?" "I volunteer there sometimes, and I know what it's like to be desperate." I crossed my arms, suddenly wary. "What do you want?" He took a deep breath. "A deal." "You need money." "I need something, too." I frowned. "What could you possibly need from me?" "Marriage." My stomach dropped. "What?" He ran a hand through his messy hair. "Look, it's complicated, but I need to be married for legal reasons. An inheritance issue. If we get married, I can access a large sum of money. I'll give you half." It was insane. It was ridiculous. But Liam needed surgery, and I was out of options. "What's the catch?" I whispered. "There isn't one," he said. "We stay married for a year, then go our separate ways. No strings attached." I should have said no. I should have walked away. Instead, I said, "Okay." And that was the moment everything changed. I sat across from Daniel in a cramped, rundown cafe. The hum of conversation buzzed around us, but all I could hear was the pounding of my heart. The weight of what I just agreed to pressed against my ribs. I was about to marry a man I barely knew. "This will help both of us," Daniel said, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. "You get the money for Liam's surgery. I get what I need." I hesitated. "And after a year, we just walk away?" His jaw clenched slightly. Yes. It felt too easy, too convenient. But I had no choice. "Fine," I said. "But we keep things professional." A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. Of course. As he reached into his pocket, I expected him to pull out a contract, maybe even a check. Instead, he set a simple silver ring on the table. I stared at it. You already had this? He shrugged. Figured I should come prepared. I should have asked more questions. I should have run. Instead, I picked up the ring and slid it onto my finger. The deal was sealed. The courthouse was cold, impersonal. The judge barely looked at us as he skimmed through the documents Daniel had prepared. I stood stiffly beside him, hands clenched at my sides. Do you, Daniel Carter, take Sophia Reed as your lawful wedded wife? I expected hesitation. Instead, Daniel's voice was firm. I do. And do you, Sophia Reed, take Daniel Carter as your lawful wedded husband? My throat felt dry. My lips barely moved. I do. And just like that, with the scratch of a pen and the stamp of a seal, I was married to a man I barely knew. He didn't kiss me. He didn't even look at me. We just walked out, two strangers bound by paper and desperation. Daniel lived in a tiny apartment, a one-bedroom place that barely had enough space for a couch and a makeshift dining table. I had expected luxury, given his offer. Instead, I found peeling paint and a leaky faucet. This is home, he said, tossing his keys onto the counter. I crossed my arms. You said you had money. I said I'd have money, he corrected. Once we prove this marriage is real. I exhaled sharply. I should have asked more questions. You can take the bedroom, he said, heading toward the couch. I'll sleep out here. Something about his casual demeanor irritated me. You're really going through all this just for an inheritance? He hesitated. Something like that. I knew he wasn't telling me everything. And I was right. Days passed. Then weeks. Daniel was kind. Distant, but kind. He never crossed boundaries. Never made me feel uncomfortable. But he was hiding something. One night, I woke to the sound of voices outside. Peeking through the window, I saw him talking to a man in a dark suit. You're running out of time, the man hissed. If they find out the truth. Daniel cut him off. I'm handling it. A chill ran down my spine. It was my husband, really. A month into our marriage, Daniel handed me a check. For Liam, he said simply. My fingers trembled as I took it. It was more money than I'd ever seen in my life. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt something heavier. How did you get this so fast? I asked. His expression darkened. You don't want to know? Just when I thought things were settling, everything came crashing down. One evening, I arrived home to find the apartment ransacked. Papers scattered, drawers overturned, and a note on the counter, written in blood-red ink. You married the wrong man. My hands shook as I read the note over and over. The words were carved into my mind like a brand. You married the wrong man. Daniel stormed in moments later, eyes scanning the wreckage. The moment he saw the note, his jaw tightened, and a muscle in his cheek twitched. Pack a bag, he said, his voice eerily calm. Daniel. Now, Sophia. The way he said my name sent shivers down my spine. This wasn't the Daniel I had known these past few weeks. This was someone else. Someone colder. Someone dangerous. I should have demanded answers. I should have refused to go anywhere with him. But something in his expression, something dark and raw, made me swallow my questions and do as he said. We left the apartment in silence, slipping into the night like fugitives. The air was thick with tension, and my heart pounded in my ears. I finally broke the silence. Who sent that note? Daniel's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Someone who wants me dead. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Dead? Daniel. What the hell is going on? He exhaled sharply. I told you this wasn't just about an inheritance. There's more to my past than I let on. I folded my arms. Yeah, no kidding. He gave me a sidelong glance, something unreadable in his gaze. Sophia, I never meant to drag you into this. But you did. Silence stretched between us. We ended up at a cheap motel off the highway. Daniel checked us in under fake names, something that sent another wave of unease through me. Once we were in the room, I turned to face him. Enough. I need the truth. All of it. Who are you, Daniel? He ran a hand down his face, looking exhausted. I was never broke, Sophia. Not really. A laugh bubbled up in my throat, but it held no humor. Yeah, I figured that out when you handed me a check for Liam's surgery without blinking. I'm not just rich, Sophia. He hesitated, then sighed. I come from one of the wealthiest families in the country. I felt the ground shift beneath me. What? He nodded. My father was a billionaire, but he was also a ruthless man. When he died, his empire should have been mine. Should have? I echoed. Daniel's eyes darkened. Someone else took it, and they'll do anything to keep it. Oh, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Daniel's hands clenched into fists. My uncle, William Carter. The name meant nothing to me, but the fury in Daniel's voice sent chills down my spine. When my father died, I was supposed to inherit everything, he continued. But my uncle had other plans. He manipulated the board, faked legal documents, and made it look like I was unfit to take over. And now he wants you dead. I whispered. Daniel nodded grimly. Because I found proof of what he did. Proof that could destroy him. I pressed a hand to my forehead. Jesus, Daniel. And you thought marrying me would help how? It gave me legal leverage, he admitted. With a wife, I look more stable. Harder to push out of the picture. Great, I muttered. So, I was just a pawn in your little war. His eyes snapped to mine. No, it wasn't like that. I shook my head, feeling sick. You should have told me the truth from the start. I didn't want to drag you into this, he murmured. Well, guess what? I snapped. You did. Before Daniel could respond, my phone buzzed. I frowned. Who would be calling me this late? Then I saw the number. The hospital. My stomach dropped. I answered, my voice shaking. Hello. Ms. Reed. You need to come to the hospital. Now. Liam. My breath hitched. Is he okay? A pause. Then, there was an incident. A man came looking for you. I felt my knees buckle. What? He was asking questions. About you. About your husband. Cold terror crawled up my spine. Daniel was already grabbing his keys. We're going. When we arrived at the hospital, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it would explode. I rushed to Liam's room, but he was asleep, oblivious to the danger surrounding us. A nurse pulled me aside. The man who came looking for you. He said his name was William Carter. My blood turned to ice. He said he wanted to talk to you, that he had an offer for you. I glanced at Daniel. His face was stone cold. What kind of offer? The nurse hesitated. He said he'd pay you $5 million to leave Daniel. My breath caught. $5 million? Daniel's jaw clenched. Of course he did. The nurse continued, lowering her voice. And if you refuse, he said he can make your son's medical bills disappear. Permanently. A shiver ran down my spine. Meaning? She swallowed hard. Meaning if you stay with your husband, he'll make sure your son never leaves this hospital. I felt like I was going to be sick. Daniel placed a firm hand on my shoulder. He's threatening Liam. I looked up at him, my vision blurred with panic. What do we do? Daniel's eyes burned with a fury I had never seen before. We fight back. Daniel took my hands, his voice low but filled with steel. I didn't want to bring you into this. But now, he's made it personal. He threatened Liam. I swallowed the lump in my throat. So what's the plan? He leaned in, his voice deadly calm. We take him down, and we make sure he never gets up again. I stared at him, my heart pounding. You really think we can win? A slow, dangerous smile spread across Daniel's lips. Oh, sweetheart. He has no idea what's coming for him. Daniel's words echoed in my head long after we left the hospital. Oh, sweetheart. He has no idea what's coming for him. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to seek revenge, but William Carter had made one fatal mistake. He threatened my son, and that was something I could never forgive. Back at the motel, Daniel paced, his mind clearly racing. We need leverage, he said, something that can destroy him before he destroys us. I clenched my fists. You said you had proof, right? That he stole your inheritance? Daniel nodded. Yes, but it's not enough. William has too much power, too many people in his pocket. If we go after him with just paperwork, he'll bury it before it ever sees daylight. Then what do we need? His lips curled into a dangerous smirk. We need to catch him doing something he can't erase. A chill ran down my spine. Like what? Daniel exhaled, leaning closer. We make him confess, and we record every word. I swallowed hard. This was dangerous, reckless, but if it meant keeping Liam safe, I'd do whatever it took. How do we get close enough to do that? I asked. His smirk widened. We make him think he's already won. The next morning, I made the call. I dialed the number left on the note William had sent, and within seconds, a deep, smug voice answered. Sophia, I was hoping you'd call. I forced my voice to shake, making myself sound unsure. I want to talk. Ah, he chuckled. So you're finally ready to come to your senses. My stomach churned at the satisfaction in his tone, but I played along. If we're going to discuss this, I want to do it in person. A wise choice, he said. Shall we meet somewhere private? I hesitated for effect before answering. Fine. You pick the place? Very well. There's a private estate outside the city. Be there at 7. Come alone. I agreed and hung up, my hands trembling. Daniel reached out and steadied them. You won't be alone, he promised. I exhaled sharply. If we screw this up, he'll kill us. Daniel's expression hardened. Then we won't screw up. Daniel spent the next few hours wiring me up, making sure the tiny recording device was hidden beneath the lace of my dress. This has to be crystal clear, he said, adjusting the tiny mic near my collar. The second he admits to anything, you get out. And if he doesn't? I whispered. Daniel's gaze darkened. Then I go in and end it myself. A shiver ran down my spine. There was something in his voice, something deadly. I had no doubt that if William so much as touched me, Daniel wouldn't hesitate to kill him. The estate was massive, a mansion that loomed like a fortress. As I stepped inside, my heart pounded so hard I thought William would hear it. He was waiting for me in a lavish study, sipping whiskey like he didn't have a care in the world. Sophia, he greeted smoothly. I'm so glad you decided to be reasonable. I forced a weak smile. I just want to talk about the deal. His smirk widened. Of course you do. $5 million is quite the incentive, isn't it? I swallowed my revulsion and nodded. Yes, but I need to know exactly what you want in return. He leaned back, swirling his glass. I want you to leave Daniel. Publicly. I want you to make it seem like he's a liar, a fraud. Say he tricked you into this marriage for money. I clenched my fists. And if I do that, you'll pay for Liam's medical bills? He laughed. I'll do more than that, darling. I'll make sure you and your son never have to struggle again. I hesitated. And if I don't? His expression darkened. Then I make sure you regret it. My stomach clenched. This was it. I needed him to say the words. I feigned nervousness. You really hate Daniel that much? His lips twisted into a sneer. Daniel is nothing. He's a disgrace. My brother would be ashamed of him. He doesn't deserve the Carter Empire. I kept pushing. So you stole it from him? He smirked. Of course I did. Bingo. My fingers twitched at my side, itching to check the recording. But I wasn't done yet. You faked everything? I whispered. He chuckled. Oh, Sophia. I didn't just fake documents. I had people killed for this. I felt my blood turn to ice. William Carter had just confessed to murder. I forced a weak laugh. Wow, that's a lot. His gaze narrowed. Why do you look so nervous? Crap. Before I could react, William lunged forward and ripped open the lace of my dress, yanking out the recording device. For a moment, time stood still. Then his face twisted in pure rage. You little. I didn't wait to hear the rest. I ran. William roared behind me, but I didn't stop. My heart slammed against my ribs as I sprinted through the mansion, dodging guards, twisting through hallways. I was almost at the door when a hand grabbed my wrist, yanking me back. I screamed. A gunshot shattered the air. The grip on my wrist went slack. William's guard collapsed, and behind him stood Daniel, a smoking gun in his hand, eyes burning with pure, unfiltered rage. Touch her again, he growled, and I'll put the next bullet between your eyes. William's face paled. Daniel, you're done, Daniel snarled. Everything you've stolen, every crime you've committed, it's over. I realized then that he wasn't alone. Behind him, several armed men stepped forward. FBI agents. Daniel smirked. You really shouldn't have confessed to murder, Uncle. William tried to run, but the agents tackled him to the ground. He fought screaming threats, but it was over. I sagged against Daniel, my body shaking. You set me up as bait. He cupped my face. And you were perfect. Tears burned my eyes. Liam, he's safe, Daniel promised. He was never in real danger. I just needed William to think he had leverage. I exhaled shakily. So, it's over. Daniel wrapped his arms around me, holding me tight. It's over, sweetheart. He'll never hurt you again. The chaos had ended. William Carter was behind bars, his empire crumbling as the world learned the truth. The media swarmed the case. Headlines splashed with words like fraud, murder, and corporate takeover. But none of that mattered to me. All I cared about was Liam. I sat by his hospital bed, watching his tiny chest rise and fall. The surgery had gone perfectly, his heart finally free from the condition that had held it hostage for so long. It should have been a moment of peace. But my heart was still tangled in something else. Daniel. He had risked everything for me. For Liam. He had set up his own uncle, orchestrated an entire takedown, and even killed a man to protect me. But he had also lied. I heard the door open behind me. I didn't have to turn to know it was him. You should be resting, Daniel said softly. I stared at Liam, my voice quiet. I can't stop thinking about it. I felt him step closer. About what? About the fact that I was just a pawn in your war. Daniel exhaled sharply. Sophia. I turned to him, eyes burning. Did you ever actually care about me? Or was I just convenient? His jaw tightened. You really think I don't care? I crossed my arms. I don't know what to think anymore. Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, regret, and something deeper, something raw and real. You were never just convenient, he said, voice low and rough. I didn't plan on this, Sophia. I didn't plan on you. I swallowed hard. Then what was I? His fingers twitched at his side. The best damn thing that ever happened to me. Daniel moved closer, his presence overwhelming. At first, yes, I needed the marriage. It was a business move, but then you came into my life and turned everything upside down. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But you lied, I whispered. He nodded, his throat bobbing. I did, and I'll never forgive myself for it. A lump rose in my throat. So what happens now? For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. That's up to you, sweetheart. My heart twisted. He meant it. He wasn't going to fight me, wasn't going to try and manipulate me into staying. He was giving me a choice. I turned back to Liam, stroking his hair. He was safe. He had a future now. And so did I. The next day, I packed my bags. Daniel watched silently, his face unreadable. Are you sure? I zipped my suitcase, refusing to meet his gaze. I just need time. He nodded stiffly. I won't stop you. I hesitated at the door, my chest tightening. Goodbye, Daniel. His voice was quiet. Goodbye, Sophia. I walked away, and it hurt more than I ever thought it would. Weeks passed. I moved into a small apartment, focusing on Liam. He was healthy, happy. We had everything we needed. But something was missing. I kept seeing Daniel's face in my mind. The way he had looked at me that night at the hospital. The way he had called me sweetheart like it meant something. I hated him, and I missed him. One night, there was a knock at my door. My heart stopped. I opened it to find Daniel standing there, looking different, vulnerable. He held something in his hands. A divorce agreement. I didn't come to ask you to take me back, he said quietly. I just wanted you to know that. I meant what I said. I love you, Sophia. But I won't trap you in this marriage anymore. My breath hitched. You. He set the papers down. If you still want out, just sign them. I won't fight it. And then, he turned to leave. My heart screamed at me. I looked at the papers. At my son. At the man who had risked everything for us. Daniel. I choked out. He stopped, shoulders tensing. I stepped forward, voice trembling. Don't go. He turned slowly, eyes searching mine. Sophia. I threw myself into his arms. He caught me instantly, holding me so tight it felt like he'd never let go. I love you too, I whispered against his chest. He exhaled shakily, pressing his forehead to mine. You have no idea how long I've waited to hear that. Tears burned my eyes. Then let's go home. And just like that, the fake marriage that started as a desperate deal became something real. Something worth fighting for. Something worth forever.